Next up, number 5, we have the Wisconsin Badgers, who made the tournament last year, lost in the round of 64 to the upstart mid-major James Madison. Wisconsin enters this season losing 3 of their top 5 scorers from last year. A.J. Storr transfers to Kansas. Tyler Wall is, I believe, out of eligibility, and Chucky Hepburn transferred to Louisville. So they bring back Klesmit and Stephen Crow, so that's good, and they'll have big roles for this team this season. They bring back John Blackwell. He was, with kind of Storr's emergence, Blackwell didn't have, the greatest impact on this team last year, but he's a candidate for maybe some type of sophomore breakout, I think. 8 points a game last year, hit 45% of his threes, so that's not nothing. They bring in Cameron Hunter from Central Arkansas, who didn't play last season because of injury, but the year before averaged 16.9 points a game, almost 4 assists. Pretty good guy with the ball in his hands, at least based on what we've seen most recently, but yeah, the big question with him is just what does he look like coming off of an injury. And they have Xavier Amos, who comes in from Northern Illinois, averaged almost 14 points a game for Northern Illinois last season. This team is objectively less talented than they were last year, I think. I think that's completely fair to say. However, I keep thinking about this tweet that I saw, and this was a couple years ago now, but I think it's perfectly descriptive of the Greg Gard Wisconsin era, which he is entering his 10th season in charge. So congrats on a decade, Greg Gard. Then the tweet was, I've understood maybe 25% of Wisconsin wins over the last decade. It's like, yeah, like Wisconsin, no matter what they look like on paper, always just wins these stupid games that you don't really understand how they won. This is another team that I've seen a lot of people peg as like a seller team in the Big Ten. But there's a chance with all the parity that they just get a bunch of stupid wins that you don't really understand how they managed to walk away with them. Their defensive system, it didn't quite work last season to the degree that it usually has under Gard, but a lot of it is predicated on fouling opposing players in a way that the refs can't determine that it was a foul, which is extremely frustrating to play against. And it didn't really work to its full effect last year, but I'm sure we can expect that will be once again a feature part of this Wisconsin team. So Alex, you spent some time in Wisconsin. What do you think about the Badgers this year?
I really like Blackwell. Like I do.
Mm-hmm.
I do think he can emerge as the guy on this team. It's just what he is last year, and again, like you said, just Storr's emergence. He had a hip injury kind of midway through the season, and I think kind of hobbled him a little bit. It was just riddled with inconsistency. Like I pulled up his game log because my memory was a little bit foggy, but I thought he was right. So he closed the game in the final 4 games of Wisconsin's season. He made 1 shot, but right preceding that 4-game spurt, he poured in 9, 11, 7, 17, 18, 18 in 6 games before. Now wait, I'll read to you the games before those. It was 2, 5, 3, 5, 3, 4. That's just a glimpse into kind of like the back half of the season. His season was essentially broken into like 5 or 6 just like incredible highs and lows. And so, again, if you want him to kind of stay at that level, I think that's the big question Greg Gard is asking himself. I guess I was going to ask you, reports are that Cam Hunter might not be the starting point guard, that it might go to Kamari McGee, that it might even be Daniel Freitag, the freshman. Is that conducive to Wisconsin's success, or is that like an indictment of both the transfer? Because early indications are maybe these 3 transfers that Gard is talking pretty openly about Wisconsin's NIL situation, that they can't compete, that he needed to kind of, I believe he said something to the effect of, in an Athletic article, that he had to kind of approach it from a almost like NBA GM roster construction, looking for like 3 specific archetypes of players. What does it say that if Tonje and Hunter and Amos aren't the respective guys at their positions. What do you think that means for Wisconsin's season?
I already don't think their ceiling is particularly high as it is.
Yeah.
So I don't know that that's probably those are the swing pieces for them to hit their ceiling. But I think this team still will revolve around Klesmit, Blackwell, and Crowell, the guys who are returning. I don't think overall it's a particularly deep team. I don't think it's a particularly talented team on paper. But like I said, I think they'll win stupid games. And Cam Hunter coming off of injury was always kind of this wild card. It's like we know what he did at Central Arkansas 2 years ago, but coming into the Big Ten, it's a different beast. It's similar to the Leach thing with Northwestern. It's like, what is he going to be if we're asking him to play the one? Because, I mean, Freitag's coming in as a freshman, so you can go into that whole thing about starting a true freshman at point guard. At least Kamari McGee has experience, at least that can be said for what he brings to the table. It's definitely not great if none of these transfers work out. It's also only a transfer class of 3 guys.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's not the worst thing in the world. It's just, as far as depth goes, it's like they don't have a whole lot of options otherwise if these guys don't work out. I just think it's not the type of year where it's like, wow, Wisconsin was a huge disappointment because their transfers from Northern Illinois and Central Arkansas didn't work out. It's like if those are the guys that you're really relying on to make this like a competitive season for your team, you're probably not going to have a great season to begin with. So I don't expect a whole lot from Wisconsin, but I do expect it to be just full Greg Gard, ugly win after ugly win, and we'll look up and they'll be another one of these teams that somehow won 8-9 games in Big Ten play along with everybody else. And that will kind of be Wisconsin's season. But I don't think they're a tournament team. I kind of went back and forth on which tier to put them in, just given what I know of Greg Gard and knowing what I know about the guys who they're bringing back. But overall, I don't really expect a whole lot from Wisconsin. So there's that.